Some truths don't explode. They don't scream or crash through the door. They creep in quietly, wearing the disguise of something small, something harmless. A single detail, a single number. And yet, that number is exactly where everything begins to unravel. This isn't the kind of revelation that sparks outrage at first glance. It's the kind that makes your chest feel tight. The kind that forces you to reread the same line again and again because your mind refuses to accept what your eyes are seeing. That is where Prince Harry finds himself now. Not facing a scandal crafted by tabloids, not dodging accusations from critics, but staring at a timeline that no longer makes sense. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. For years, Harry stood like a shield. Every question aimed at Meghan was brushed aside as cruelty. Every doubt was labeled harassment. Anyone who challenged her story was dismissed as bitter, irrelevant, or dangerous. One voice in particular was silenced almost instantly: Samantha Markle. She was portrayed as unreliable, jealous, and desperate for attention. The world was told she didn't matter. But what happens when the person everyone told you to ignore is the only one pointing at something concrete, something printed, something dated, something that doesn't bend no matter how much pressure you apply? This wasn't gossip whispered behind closed doors. This was a timeline problem. And timelines don't lie just because they're inconvenient. Long before royal titles, before televised interviews, before carefully curated speeches, someone was quietly noticing that the math didn't add up. Samantha wasn't chasing relevance. She wasn't reacting to fame. She was remembering birthdays, school years, and shared moments that simply didn't align with the story the public would later be told. She noticed small changes. A year nudged here, an age adjusted there, nothing outrageous on its own, but together those shifts formed a pattern. And patterns are dangerous when they don't fit the official narrative. When Meghan's public biography began circulating, Samantha didn't see a fairy tale. She saw a version of events that didn't match the life she remembered. And when she said so, the response was swift and brutal. Her motives were attacked. Her character was shredded. Her credibility wasn't examined. It was erased. But here's the detail no one likes to acknowledge. Samantha never changed her story. Not once. She didn't escalate. She didn't dramatize. She didn't pivot when public opinion turned against her. She repeated the same concern, calmly, consistently, while the world rolled its eyes. Because she wasn't guessing, she was recalling facts. And facts have a stubborn habit of staying the same, even when everyone wishes they wouldn't. The proof didn't come from a palace vault or a courtroom revelation. It came from somewhere far more unsettling. March 1997. A teenage magazine, forgotten on a rack, flipped through casually, never meant to carry weight decades later. Inside it, a small lifestyle feature. No drama, no agenda, just names and ages printed plainly in ink. And there it was, Meghan Markle, listed as 21 years old. Not implied, not suggested, printed. This wasn't written after fame. It wasn't touched by publicists or advisors. It existed in a time when no one was watching closely enough to care. And that's exactly why it mattered. Because if the officially stated birth year were correct, she would have been a teenager at the time. 15, maybe 16. Yet the magazine didn't list a teenager. It listed an adult. A 6-year gap. Too large to ignore. Too specific to dismiss. The page didn't accuse anyone. It didn't speculate. It simply existed. And by existing, it cracked the foundation of everything built after it. The story might have remained theoretical if not for one crucial mistake. Harry spoke too freely. In his memoir, he didn't just recount Archie's birth, he painted it like a dream. Soft lighting, calm energy, music, 2 epidurals, and then, almost immediately, Meghan walking out of the hospital refreshed, composed, ready. On the surface, it sounded beautiful, intimate, perfect, but reality doesn't bend for beautiful storytelling. Anyone who understands childbirth knows one immovable truth. After an epidural, a woman cannot simply stand up and walk out. The lower body is numbed. Blood pressure must stabilize. Movement returns gradually. Observation isn't optional, it's mandatory. And yet, Harry's timeline suggested that labor, 2 epidurals, delivery, recovery, and discharge all happened in roughly 2 hours. Not unlikely, not rare, impossible. The problem wasn't emotion. It was the clock. And once time enters the story, the fantasy collapses. That's where the age discrepancy stops being personal and becomes medical. Pregnancy isn't judged by appearances, it's judged by risk. And risk changes dramatically with age. Over 35, pregnancies are classified differently. Over 40, everything shifts. Monitoring increases. Tests multiply. Observation periods stretch. Caution replaces optimism. If Meghan were the age the public believed, late 30s, the birth would still demand careful careful oversight. But if the earlier timeline were correct, placing her in her early 40s, then the idea of a rushed discharge becomes absurd. Add epidurals into the equation and the story becomes medically unworkable. Suddenly, the secrecy surrounding the birth starts to make sense. The private hospital, the undisclosed medical team, the tightly controlled information. This wasn't about privacy anymore, it was about control. Because medical facts don't bend to narratives, and once they enter the conversation, stories lose flexibility. To understand why this mattered so deeply, you have to understand the worlds Meghan moved through. Hollywood is ruthless with time. Roles vanish, doors close. Youth isn't admired, it's required. Adjusting an age isn't vanity there, it's survival. Then came royalty. In that world, age isn't about career longevity, it's about optics, fertility, heirs. A younger bride fits a fairy tale. An older one introduces urgency. One story sells romance, the other invites scrutiny. So perfection became non-negotiable. Every appearance had to align. Every milestone had to fit, because once one detail slips, everything else follows. That's why the pregnancies were sealed tight, why timelines were guarded, why questions were deflected instead of answered. It wasn't about deceiving the public, it was about protecting a story that couldn't survive examination. Eventually, memory alone wasn't enough. That's when Thomas Markle entered the picture, not as an angry father, not as a commentator, but as a man who kept records long before they mattered. He raised her, he paid for her education, he documented milestones the way parents do. School years, achievements, dates frozen in time. When Samantha was dismissed as unreliable, Thomas didn't hesitate. He said something simple and devastating. Samantha had never lied to him. Every concern she raised checked out. This wasn't a reaction to fame. It was a correction, and corrections are dangerous when a narrative has already been sold as truth. Now it wasn't sibling rivalry, it was documentation, a paper trail, a timeline rooted in lived reality, not public relations. The question shifted. It was no longer who was telling the truth. It became which version had been promoted. And this is where everything turns back to Harry. He believed, he defended, he sacrificed family, country, role. He thought he was protecting the truth. But what if the truth he protected was already edited? That realization doesn't arrive with rage. It arrives with silence. Harry now stands inside a narrative he helped amplify, wondering which parts were real and which were rehearsed. His memoir, his interviews, his loyalty, all built on trust. And trust, once fractured, doesn't shatter loudly. It settles. Samantha isn't celebrating. Thomas isn't attacking. The past isn't arguing. It's just sitting there, printed, documented, unchanged, because the most devastating truths don't shout. They wait, and once you see them, they don't need defending. They ask only one final question. If something as basic as age had to be rewritten, what else was carefully edited before anyone noticed? Did before anyone noticed? Did before anyone...